Well, I'm delighted today to be speaking to Carlton Crabbe, who's the CEO of Capital for Life. Welcome, Carlton.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you for having me.
So hugely excited to be working with you on our inaugural event in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia this November. For people who don't know about Capital for Life, it'd be interesting to hear a little bit more about your background in the business and your interest in the Saudi market.
Yeah, thank you, David. I'm excited to be in Saudi too, as well, with you and some of your other invitees. So Capital for Life we are an insurance brokerage. We predominantly focus on high net worth individuals and ultra high net worth individuals. It is the predominant part of the business is life insurance. So for things like estate planning, for paying taxes, things like retirement planning that they can be used for. And I've been doing that for 7 years. Capital for Life is now 7 years old. And before that, I was doing it for probably another 3 or 4 years at a bank. So that's a little bit about Capital for Life.
And you were based in Dubai until quite recent, so you know that region well. You know, it gives you a different angle from, say, a UK-based broker. You know, the knowledge of the client base and the trends from the region.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
I was a resident in Dubai with my family for 11 years, and so we know the region incredibly well. It's a fantastic place to live and to work. I normally visit Dubai once a month anyway, from the United Kingdom. And I think also from the United Kingdom perspective as well, we obviously get a lot of UK expatriates in Dubai and the Middle East. And understanding the tax implications of universal life insurance is really critical to make sure we get things set up. But I think for us, Saudi is a really still a new market. We've got about 7 or 8 cases just that we've done or been running through currently. And that's really exciting because I think that Saudi is probably the next Dubai in a different form, of course. It will be its own unique form of that. But I think there's a lot of business to be done in Saudi. I think it's very exciting what they're doing and the opportunities there for businesses.
Do those cases tend to have UK property as the underlying, or could it be assets on a global basis? What tends to drive those cases that you mentioned about?
Yeah, it's in many cases it's around retirement planning, so building up a large cash value in these policies for retirement. The expatriates that we're coming across at the moment are predominantly using it for that reason, and of course leaving wealth to the next generation, so their children, and in some cases nieces and nephews. So those nieces and nephews are going to be doing very nicely. But of course, I think probably because of my background, we do see a disproportionate number of British people. And understanding how their tax will work back in the United Kingdom as well as overseas is important.
And what are the type of contacts you're trying to engage at the event in November? I mean, we're looking forward to having some interesting discussions, a lovely dinner. We're going to have a broad array of people at the event in Saudi. What are the type of professionals you're trying to engage there?
I think probably like the other markets, David, really, the lawyers, the accountants, the tax advisors, and other professionals in that area, and also trustees, of course. We are all operating in the same sort of eco space. It's important that every professional is engaged with certainly high net worth individuals. I've learned over 25 years now that you don't operate, or you shouldn't operate, in a vacuum. We need to employ other people or ask for other people's help whenever we need it. And most people need tax advice. Most people also need some form of legal advice. And some people need structuring advice. So whichever way you turn, you'll end up using asking one of your sort of fellow professionals to be involved. So any of those professionals, I'm looking forward to engaging with those.
Great. And what are some of the trends driving demand in your market? I mean, we mentioned there on pension and retirement planning, so expats overseas earning good money, but perhaps the defined benefit schemes of the past are not necessarily there, so it provides some protection for them in the long run, or changes on the tax side for UK property, on inheritance tax. What are some of the things that you think are making, driving demand for insurance solutions right now for international investors?
All of those, David.
Yeah.
I mean, you're absolutely right. One of the big changes, and this is going back quite a number of years now, but one of the big changes was that UK property could never be held inside, or it can be held inside an offshore company, but it's no longer exempt from UK inheritance tax. So that's obviously still in play as an idea. The other one is the estate tax for Saudi nationals who own typically own large amounts of property, high value property in London, which is connected as well. Also retirement planning, so using cash value and just finding a very good, strong, in this case, in case of our business, life insurance companies where cash can be parked and it can be grown in a safe and secure environment. So yeah, just trying to find the best in the world to do that.
And on the inheritance tax piece, a lot of people in low interest rate environments were using debt on property purchase as their inheritance tax planning effectively. But obviously that picture's changing. How are you seeing that having an impact on how people are deciding on that structuring piece as they buy a property here in the UK?
Yeah, that's a great point. There's a case we're doing at the moment. The individual owns an awful lot of property. And again, through one of our professional partners who helps with mortgages and structuring, we were asked to come in because the client is looking to pay down the debt, and therefore there's the exposure to UK inheritance tax, and therefore there'll be potentially this need. In this case, we're going to go forward with a fairly large policy of a few tens of millions of dollars to cover that liability because, as you said, interest rates moved significantly upwards, and it's no longer it's no longer great to hold debt at these prices in all circumstances.
And how would these policies be set up if people like the idea of putting a policy in place? Does it need medicals? And if they're based in Saudi, what happens in order for them to go through the journey to get the policy in place?
Yeah, so you're right. The client will need to undertake a medical. We'll need to do financial underwriting on them. Of course, there's an insurable interest there, making sure they can justify the level of cover, which is not normally that hard with the individuals we come across. From that point on, the only policies that we deal with are international policies. So we need an offshore structure, like a company or a trust, to go and hold that. In some cases, we use pension trusts as well to go and hold those policies. That's set up. The policy is then held and bought by that offshore vehicle.
Okay, and I think in the UK we see Saudi a lot in the press. There's a lot of discussion about investment into sports clubs and different, global investment trends. But also at home, there's a lot of investment, isn't there? And new cities springing up. I mean, what do you observe of within Saudi, investment and development going on?
Again, you're right, David. There's huge amounts of money going into these projects at home in Saudi, in their domestic market. I was reading just earlier today, one project was expected to cost $500 billion, which is an extraordinary amount of money, whichever way you look at it.
Yeah.
So you've got these big projects. You've got NEOM, you've got Alula, you've got the Red Sea project, and there are quite a handful of others, and they're all bringing in large amounts of talent, both locally in the region and in Saudi itself, and also from overseas as well. They need huge amounts of manpower, both physical and mental manpower, to really bring these projects to life. They're spending huge amounts of money. I mean, more money than any other part of the world is spending. And so you've got this huge talent attraction. And of course, we're going to get a brain drain from many other parts of the world because of that.
And then flowing from that, people need services, don't they, to prepare for the longer term picture, because they may only be earning short term in the country, and they need a plan for the longer term, which is, I guess, where you would end up engaging them.
Yeah, that's correct. You've got very high earners in the region. The salaries we typically see are sort of $400,000 to over $1 million of income a year. In Saudi, of course, that's free of any income tax, and so you've got extremely high earners, lots and lots of them, and more going to the region to perform these roles, which need to be performed because the Saudi government is putting all this infrastructure in place. And of course, they're looking for a safe home to park their money, to park their funds, to save for the future, so that one day when those projects are finished and they retire, probably back to their own nation or outside of Saudi, it's a nest egg that they can rely on as part of their overall financial planning.
And I mean, there's many places where people can get insurance advice, but what is your USP around delivering independent advice for clients, particularly in Saudi?
It goes back to the point that we were talking about earlier. It's engaging other professionals as and when you need to. We always use tax professionals, and we quite often engage lawyers as well. And in the vast majority of the cases, we use trustees to structure the solutions. So that in itself, I think, is unique. I also like to think that we have one of our USPs is we understand tax very well. So we're not tax advisors, but because of our tax knowledge, we will then see where there's a tax issue. For example, a UK domicile individual should not just go and buy a universal life insurance policy without some form of tax advice and structuring appropriately to go with that. So we just want to make sure the clients don't trip into buying a product or a solution, if you like, that is going to either be not beneficial to them from a tax perspective or not going to have the advantages they expect.
There are so many traps to the unwary, aren't there? And if you have someone who's just her only mission is to try and sell that policy, clients can come unstuck, can't they, in all these details?
They can. And I'm sure there are cases of that happening. And one of the things we pride ourselves on is, and this is quite personal, but I like to look at every single case that comes across our desk and goes through our business, because it's to make sure it's the right advice that's been given to the client, it's the right structure they're holding it in, and basically the solution is fit for purpose. And because we're still niche and relatively small to some of the other big global brokers, and we focus specifically on certain areas, I believe we can do that very well.
Well, great to talk to you today, Carlton, and look forward to seeing you in Riyadh in November.
Thanks so much indeed, David. Thanks for having me.
The latest technical content delivered through global conversations with professionals for professionals.